Get ready.
Hey guys, so I wanted to do a separate tutorial on the trace option that is found in all of the effects over here in the Outliner FX panel. It is not found in the custom shapes and shape effects because those you're drawing your own shape. You're not finding the edges of something. And so the trace effect is going to find contrasty dark and light edges and apply an outline to those so that we can then wriggle it, animate it, radiate it, just like you would with applying an effect to something that has transparency, except here we're kind of creating our own transparency. So easier just to show you. I'm going to use the radiate effect here and apply it to this volume meter because this is a really easy one. This has a lot of contrast, but it doesn't have any transparency, as you can see. So the outline is just going around the outer edge of our video. So the first thing I want to do is apply the trace effect. Over here in the inspector, you'll see it's about, I don't know, 8 down or so, and its default is off, and we're just going to flip it to trace. And you can see right away it has applied outlines all over the place to what it thinks is contrasty edges. And it's also turned on, of course, the radiate effect, since that's what we applied. We're going to play with that in a minute. And there is a reason behind my madness, but let's turn off the intensity of the radiate effect so we're not got a big 0 for the radiate. So we've set it to trace. And you can also choose invert trace. They sort of do the same thing. One finds the inside of the edges, one finds the outside of the edges, but they will flip-flop with the threshold. So a couple different ways to get the same thing. Let's start with trace and play with the threshold now down here, which is going to determine just how contrasty something is before it gets an outline. If we lower it here, yeah, this is an example why you might want to invert something. So it's choosing the, I believe, the inside of everything. And so we are getting the actual frame itself here too. So I want to invert the trace because I just want the stuff here on the interior of our frame. So let's invert that. And then we'll have to push threshold the other direction. But I think you'll see we don't get that, yeah, that boxy border. Okay, we are still getting some stuff in the corners. And there may be nothing we, yep, if I go farther, I lose my meter in the middle. So let's do as good as we can. Somewhere around 0.8, that's good right there. Let's change the width. Let's make it a little thinner so we make sure it's doing just what we want. Maybe half as wide, maybe 15. I'm liking that. That looks pretty good. Now you can go in here and still play with things like centered, outside, and inside. I'll just leave it on centered. Looks like it's doing pretty good. And if any of these other controls you want to learn more about them, go back and watch the standard effect tutorial. The standard effect tutorial for this will teach you how to use all the controls in the effect. And pretty much the same for all the different effects. There are tutorials on each one of the electric, extrude, rough, all the different styles. But the trace effect is the same across them all. So let's see. So we left off here. We inverted the trace. We set it to 79. We lowered the width. Let's go ahead and change the color to a gradient. And this is sort of why I wanted to use the radiate effect. It doesn't have the textures and fills of the classic outliner, but this one is just kind of to be backward compatible with what people are used to in the original outliner. And it doesn't have all the color controls. So with the radiate effect, if we turn off radiate, we still have the different line type options. And we also have radiate, as well as the new color controls like gradient and outline gradient. All right, but we've got it looking pretty good. And I think I'm going to have fun and we'll switch it to neon. That's what I had in the demo, but we're still getting these edges. We really just want this meter in the middle, and we don't want to see the meter itself in the background. So down here at the bottom, we have our source controls. We can actually crop out what we don't want. Very helpful in a green screen situation as well. So let's crop the left as much as we can. And yes, I see the source is getting cropped. That's what we're doing. We're going to address that in just a second. I don't think we need the little housing for the needle, this arc at the bottom. I just want the level. And I see it's not getting the needle itself. I think it's just not contrasty enough, and it's kind of in motion. But you can still see it moving by what is being omitted when it's animated. We'll see that in a second. Let's crop the top. So that's looking pretty good. Of course, we don't want the background. Oh, I still see one little dot over here. Let's crop the top a little bit more. That looks good. Okay, so now let's get rid of this background. In the same section, the source section here, we don't need to scale it. You could if you wanted to, but we have an opacity control. And so now, there's our meter. Let's play that back and see what we got. I like it. So since we use the Radiate effect, we can now invoke, if we wanted to, a little bit of Radiate. Let's crank it up. Why not? And play that back and see what we've got. Pretty cool. And since we have the effect here, we could also add some wriggle. I don't know how that's going to look with the Radiate effect. It's probably verging on the need to render it here, but you know, why don't we just turn off the Radiate and take a look at it with the wriggle. Lots of options there. Okay, it's really fun. You can find edges and animate them and give it a little bit of a wriggle or a radiate. Okay, but let's look at a tougher clip. This flower here. Now the flower has opacity already around it. So I'm going to apply the neon effect. And of course we have an outline around the outer edge of the flower. This flower that has opacity. And so let's go over here and invoke the trace effect. See what we get. Little dots all over the place. Okay, so we need to adjust this threshold for sure. So let's take it down where it doesn't have to be so contrasty before it adds a line. And you know what? I cannot see what's going on. So let's take the width of our outline down just like we did. Now I'm starting to see our outlines. Okay, let's keep bringing that threshold down. All right, so that's a little too much. Somewhere around 0.1 even, almost at the very bottom of the threshold. Let's go ahead and turn our source off like we did. Bring the opacity all the way down so we can see what we've got. And now it's starting to look like a flower again. We could go back to the gradient. And blue is cool, but I'm thinking purple. Maybe purple to green? No. Blue? Is that what we had? And of course we can adjust the gradient here so it's more about purple than blue. That looks pretty good. Play that back. Let's see. Yep. So you got all these flickering little dots here. That's because it is a actual video of a flower and is moving and blowing in the wind. I think that adds a little bit of animation to it. And speaking of animation, we could actually add some wriggle, which will give us a little more of an artsy, you know, line art animation kind of a look. And on top of that, because this is the neon effect, we have a lot of controls for our neon. We might want to bring down some of the glows, you know, and the intensity. This might bring out some more. And the maybe the inner brightness. You know, some of the, we bring some of this stuff, too much. Outer brightness down. So we can get a little bit more detail here. Might even make the line a little thinner. Anyway, we can play with all these neon controls here just to bring out just as much detail as we want. All right, well, that's all I got for you. I just wanted to share a little tutorial on the trace effect itself, since it is kind of its own beast and can be a little bit finicky, but really there's only two controls you need to mess with: the trace, invert or regular, and the threshold control. If one is not doing exactly what you want, flip it to the invert, and you probably have to swing the threshold all the way the other way. That's it. Hope you guys enjoyed playing with the trace effect.